John Fox was the former lead singer of Ultravox. He worked in Shoreditch, in London's then unfashionable East End.
These modular synths were the first generation, really, of working synthesizers. And then the companies decided to make a cheap version of it because no one could afford these, or very few people could afford those. And they condensed all that down into this. London seemed almost empty in the 70s. I used to walk around the streets and there were newspapers blowing around and a car in the distance and grey concrete walls, and everything seemed gritty and lost somehow, like we'd lost direction. And I wonder what that was about. I wasn't angry about it anymore, as we were supposed to be as punks. I just wanted to make music for it, the kind of music that I could hear.
Standing in the dark, watching you glow, lifting a receiver. Nobody I know.
Underpass is such a Ballardian idea, the underpass with the sodium lights, and you might be mugged, and it's very 70s dystopian, the spectral city.
World War something.
This was the industrial bit of London that had served the docks and done some manufacturing, and both of which had gone. It was like living in a Quatermass movie, because I realised and discovered that underneath all this area are the plague pits where the bodies were thrown. So that inevitably leaks into the music. That's why a lot of my music's so dark, I think. It's because I come from Lancashire, and where did I end up but in a place even more sinister?
Fox's music wasn't the only synthetic portrait of the 70s metropolis. An experimental group of artists known as Throbbing Gristle had been forging their own electronic industrial sounds in their Death Factory down the road in Hackney.
Grim.
Yeah, it was grim. It was very run down. The factory was an old trouser factory, and it was near London Fields, and in the basement we were on level with the plague pits. That's why it got called the Death Factory. There was still a lot of sort of antagonism left over from, I know it sounds like unbelievable, post-war, because there were still people there, like the park keeper, who used to be one of Mosley's brown shirts.
I mean, it sounds a bit of a cliche now, but at the time we were trying to sort of reflect the sounds around us in some weird way. Our studio was in like an industrial area, and there were lots of different noises going on all the time. And we were sort of trying to reflect all these sounds and the way they all come together into like this weird mishmash of electronic experimental textures. Felt kinship with a lot of bands, didn't we? Especially sort of Sheffield bands. And
yeah, Cabaret Voltaire, those people. Yeah. But I think the kinship was the fact that we were all independent.
Yeah.
Chris Carter in Throbbing Gristle was a sort of nut for Tangerine Dream and that kind of music. So they were sort of some hypnotic, dreamy, electronic Throbbing Gristle tracks that were actually quite sort of pretty in a funny sort of misshapen way.
And I had these synths. And because they were homemade synths, that they weren't bought sort of off the shelf, they weren't Rolands and Korgs, they sounded quite unique anyway. They didn't sound like regular synths. And then I built this effects unit. I saw this design in practical electronics, and you could combine all the effects together and put a guitar through it or a voice or anything. So I started building these units for Throbbing Gristle and called them gristalizers. We were never punk, we're not punk, we were industrial. We're an industrial experimental music band.
Come 1979, British electronic music was still being ignored by mainstream labels. So Dan Miller founded Britain's first electronic indie, Mute, to release recordings by kindred spirit Fag Gadget, as well as his own work.
I wasn't interested in rock and rock music at all at that point. I really only was interested in electronic music. And I thought that was the future of where exciting music was going to come from, and I wanted to be part of promoting that.
One of Mute's first releases would be strangely prescient.
I came across an old Chuck Berry songbook that I had at home, and I thought, I wonder what that sounds like done on synthesizers.
Long distance information, give me Memphis, Tennessee. Help me find a party, trying to get in touch with me.
Everyone said, you've got to release it, it's amazing, you know. And I thought, okay, what shall I do? Because I don't think it doesn't kind of fit in under the normal kind of name. And then I just thought, well, what about if there was a group that were all teenagers and their first choice of instrument was a synthesizer rather than a guitar? Because that hadn't happened yet. John Peel, I remember I'd given it to him, and I was listening to the radio. I was with a couple of friends who said, we got 3 versions of Memphis, Tennessee tonight. One is the original. There are 2 cover versions. One is really terrible and the other one's really great. And I thought, oh God. And fortunately, the way he really liked mine, he played it twice. That was one of the biggest moments of my entire career in the music.
And that's the end of tonight's programme, in which you heard the Desperate Bicycles, the Slits, the Mekons, Alternative TV, the UK Subs and Sham 69. More of the same unpleasant and disorientating racket on tomorrow night's programme. Until then, from me, John Peel, good night and good riddance.
Getting your record on the Peel Show was one thing, but nobody was ready for what happened next.